Hey Queens! Unless you've been living under a rock, you have definitely heard about Bridgerton, Netflix's immensely popular alt history Regency drama. This is one show that has always divided TV audiences. Whether it's due to the diverse casting choices, its inclusion of steamy romance scenes over quiet, longing courtship, or the extravagant and one-of-a-kind costumes. Never seen before in any period drama. Whether you love it or hate it, Bridgerton is a pop culture phenomenon. And the same can be said about its costumes that have honestly carved a niche for themselves in the world of costume design. But believe it or not, this unique look wasn't created by accident. It's a carefully designed aesthetic that takes into account not just historical references, but the world of the story as well as the lives of each of the characters. Moreover, it contains countless references to icons from the worlds of fashion, pop culture and literature, such as Grace Kelly, Audrey Hepburn, Shakespeare, and even Jessica Rabbit. And let me tell you, this design journey from Jane Austen to Marilyn Monroe takes a fascinating trajectory. A trajectory that we're now about to follow so that we can uncover all of the elements that go into creating Bridgerton's signature costume design style. Are you ready? But before we move forward, if you want more stories about pop culture, fashion, movies, TV, and occasionally a little bit of me, then make sure to subscribe. And now let's pull up our stockings and fasten our feathers because it's time to move into the dazzling world of Bridgerton. For most people, the costumes of Bridgerton elicit one of two reactions. Either they are mesmerized and completely in awe of the garments as well as the sheer production scale of the costumes, or it's this. Seriously, there is no in between. And honestly, I don't blame them. I think it's safe to say that a lot of the clothing on this show, especially starting from season 3, is positively mad. But like I mentioned before, there is a method to this madness, which is exactly what I want to explore today. But before we can do that, we need to understand what kind of a show Bridgerton actually is. Meet John Glazer, the Emmy-winning designer and head costume specialist for Bridgerton since season 3. According to John, on Bridgerton, we create things that are fun and fantasy. Speaking to InStyle, he says, "This is not a history lesson, this is a show about beauty and glamour." Alright, fair enough. But even a show as fantastical and out there as Bridgerton needs a foundation to base its designs in. And while John Glazer claims that Bridgerton is not a history lesson, the show's solid costume design foundation definitely comes from a firm understanding of it. This one surprised me as well. Generally, when there is a contemporary period drama whose costumes tend to deviate from the styles of the time period that it's set in, our first assumption is that it's due to a lack of information on the part of the designers. Either they didn't have the historical evidence about a particular element of the clothing, or we assume that they just didn't bother doing their research well enough. However, contrary to popular belief, the costume designers of Bridgerton are actually well versed in the fashions of the early 1800s and regularly reference real sources from the era, including paintings, fashion plates, and everything else that they can get their hands on. And when they begin designing, they take the general silhouette of the time period as a starting point for creating their costumes. This is the blank slate. It's a clever way of grounding your designs so that the end results never deviate from the era that they are set in. That way, you can innovate as much as you want with regards to the other elements such as fabrics and embellishments, and the final costume still feels like it belongs in the same story universe. But the silhouette isn't the only element taken from history. A lot of the accessories worn by the characters are also inspired by real pieces from the early 1800s. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to be giving examples mostly from season 4 of Bridgerton as well as a little bit from season 3. Now, in the 4th season, Benedict wears these two accessories that were actually worn by young men in this time period. One of them is a bracelet that he's been wearing since the beginning of this show. It is supposedly a keepsake or a love token that he wears for some unknown sentimental reason, because according to the designers, everything in this era was worn for a reason. And while the show version is made of leather and waxed gold thread, with small little gold charms, the more historically accurate version of this would have been made from woven hair. That is so freaking cool. Another historical accessory that he wears are these fobs. These were commonly worn by men in the Regency era and hung from their trousers, holding watches, keys, and even wax stamps used to seal letters or documents. Now, the ones Benedict wears are initially more utilitarian, but on his wedding day, he's got these small sentimental charms dangling off of them, namely a book, an artist's pencil, as well as a cottage symbolizing all of the things that he holds most dear. Stop, that is so cute. Oh my god. But moving on, for the Bridgerton costume designers, once they've established their basic historical silhouette, this becomes their foundation. And from here on out, they can experiment to their heart's content. I like to call this taking a blank slate and making it fashion. So in this clip posted by Glamour magazine, Nick Collins, the hair and makeup designer for the show, describes the step-by-step of their costuming process.
The design for any character in the show always comes from the script and who the character is, what their background is, what their story arc is. And then we create mood boards for the look of that character to tell their story or their journey.
What this basically means is that once you've established a time period and location, aka your story setting, as well as the type of general silhouette for your clothing, you can then make changes to it according to each character, their personalities, and storylines. This is a common practice while creating costumes for film and TV, and it's called character-driven design. Because just like in real life, the personalities and backgrounds of each character influence their fabric choices, their colors, as well as the trims and embellishments that they choose to adorn themselves with. But what makes the costumes of Bridgerton different is the freedom with which they execute these design choices. George Sayer, who is the assistant costume designer on the sets of Bridgerton, says, "Using Regency as a basis, we transform from Regency to a fantasy Regency, so that we can include periods that suit the style rather than accuracy." To which John Glazer adds, "Let's call it Bridgerton accuracy. It's based on something, but it's been Bridgetized." And this is the key to the show's distinctive style. Being a historical fantasy means that it's not restricted by the cage of historical accuracy. And this allows the designers to incorporate modern couture techniques, add contemporary pop culture references, blend historical time periods, as well as reference the clothing elements of different cultures that their diverse cast belongs to, all while still maintaining the distinct Bridgerton silhouette. The analogy that they use to describe this is, imagine a classic Jaguar car, but painted with a paisley print. This doesn't mean, of course, that we just allow our imaginations to go wild and do anything. Instead, every season, the costumes are designed with a specific theme in mind. For example, in season 3, they tried to make everything look like a garden. There's lots of ombre from light to dark in the way that the flowers change colors from season to season. There is layering of the fabrics and textures, playing off of the transparency of these fabrics to create depth and achieve a painterly effect. Whereas season 4 is all about fairy tales and death, and it's the first season to be set in the fall-winter rather than spring or summer. And accordingly, the color palette is full of warmer colors, playing up the contrast rather than trying to blur things. Even the whites and blacks have been replaced by pastels and navy blues or rich fabrics like satin and velvet, which apparently the camera loves to see. There's also a focus on the element of time this season, with a lot of the costumes having silhouettes inspired from the 1820s to show a progression in years. Most evident in the outfits of Araminta, Rosamund, and Posey are heroine Sophie's stepfamily. And in true Bridgerton style, their outfits also take inspiration from the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, with Araminta's wardrobe supposedly embodying the spirit of none other than Anna Wintour. What? Speaking to Vogue UK, John Glazer says, "Anna, when you see her walking down the street, you know right away who she is. You're not afraid of her, but you're going to respect her. You see her coming and you better be ready. She's a strong person." Sure, that's one way of describing Araminta as well, I guess. I wonder how Anna feels about always being the inspiration behind the coldest, most vindictive characters on screen. Then again, if I were her, I'd probably love it. There are a few cheeky pop culture references in the outfits of our season 4 lead characters as well, such as Sophie's sparkling silver masquerade ball dress, referencing the famous silver dress worn by Cinderella in the 1950s Disney movie. Yes, it was silver, not blue. The silver shoes are also an iconic pair from the brand Jimmy Choo, not to mention her amethyst pendant, which is a symbolic reference to her Korean heritage. Meanwhile, Benedict's masquerade look is a reference not just to the literary genius Shakespeare, but the costume itself is very much inspired by Joseph Fiennes' look in the movie Shakespeare in Love. But sneaky pop culture references are not the only thing that Bridgerton's costume designers excel at. As I mentioned before, designers John Glazer, George Sayer, and Dougie Hawkes consider Bridgerton to be a very special show because it has allowed them the opportunity to be true designers. And if there are two characters on the show who really embody the spirit of creativity, it's Queen Charlotte and Miss Cressida Cowper. I mean, the Queen's outfits in every season are absolutely mind-blowing, with tons of intricate embellishments and handiwork. I mean, look at those sculptural bows, the rongo flowers, the gemstone embroidery. Oh, so lush. But if I may, I think a lot of us will agree that the real star attractions of the show are her stunningly elaborate wigs, each one more absurd and brilliant than the next. But my favorites from season 4 are the masquerade wig in the style of Queen of Hearts, with a small recreation of her nuptial crowns inside made of hair, with the pattern of the wire cage on the outside referencing constellations in the sky, a slight nod to her husband King George's love for astronomy, with the other two favorites being the Igbo braids and Tree of Life wigs. Now, while the Queen's outfits are about opulence and craftsmanship, Cressida's outfits I think are the most couture, with sculptural leaf sleeves, feathers, frills, and big bow collars. This is in line with her eccentric looks from previous seasons that even featured outfits with 3D printed embellishments and accessories. Her husband, Lord Penwood, also has a slight rock and roll influence to his looks. His coats have a 1980s shoulder silhouette with deep neck shirts and a triangle pendant in the style of a guitar pick. According to the costume designers, if Prince was still alive, he would definitely want to wear this. But is creating beautiful pieces of clothing enough to establish an aesthetic? Once we've let our creativity run wild, how can we prevent everything from looking chaotic and disjointed? Well, in the case of Bridgerton, the factor that pulls all the distinct elements and the crazy fashions together is co-design. You see, the thousands of costumes and accessories worn by its cast are all made in-house. Yes, everything. As George Sayer puts it, because our style is so distinctive, it's really hard to go and hire it anyways, because it's not your traditional Regency costume. But because of that, all of the creative and design teams work in tandem to create things. And this leads to a more unified look. The costume department works closely together with hair and makeup and the art department, sending over swatches and pictures of developing costumes so they can make sure everything goes together, including the sets. Like making a beautiful oil painting, each element is worked in layer by layer until a complete work of art comes through. This means that not only do the costumes work together with the story world, but the world of the story is also built to fit around the amazing costumes, so that everything looks like a complete picture in the end. Because the aim of the Bridgerton aesthetic is to immerse you into an impossible world of romance and fantasy, so that everywhere you look, there is something beautiful and magical to feast your eyes upon. But the story doesn't end there. According to John Glazer, the formula for designing Bridgerton's dazzling costumes every season is the combination of the same three factors: history plus fashion plus art, all three of which we've already explored thus far in this video. But is that really all there is to it? I believe there is actually a secret fourth element which makes the costumes of this show a little different than the rest. Something that sets it apart from other contemporary period dramas. And that element is
sexy, pirate, romantic and sexy, a little sexier, sexy pirate, romantic and sexy, sexy pirate, a period version of a Calvin Klein.
To help with the action.
No, I swear I am serious. You see, Bridgerton, much like a lot of other contemporary period dramas, is influenced by the whims of modern day viewers. AKA, they know that people want to see hot people. Which is why, more often than not, period accuracy in costuming is swapped out for softer, racier, and more sensual alternatives. But it's not all about skin show. Rather, the Bridgerton main character look has more to do with vibes and teasing the audiences. It's about the slightly open shirt, the sheer fabrics giving us just a hint of skin, softly curled hair, glowing makeup, and lightly glossed lips. And yes, choosing the most ethereal, gorgeous human beings to dress up in these looks, of course. There is no denying the fact that nobody does the irresistible main character makeover better than Bridgerton. And that without a doubt, this is the X factor that has brought the show its immense popularity, cementing its place in the pop culture zeitgeist. Do I, as a fashion history nerd, always understand their decision to forsake historical accuracy for the sake of aesthetics? No, not really. But damn, do I understand the appeal. Now, so far I have talked about the general process of designing costumes on the show Bridgerton. And while I adore the show's aesthetic, my personal opinion as someone who watches historical shows and movies to see examples of beautiful period clothing is that I wish they would incorporate more historical elements into the costumes and have them made exactly as they used to be in that era. Like, I understand their reasoning for not doing so, but sometimes I feel like they underestimate the tolerance of their audiences. Like with Benedict's bracelet, when they changed the material to leather and thread because they felt like being made of hair would be in bad taste, or that none of the ladies wear the period accurate gloves when they go to balls because leather apparently doesn't look that good on camera. What? Have they seen 2020's Emma? Leather gloves look amazing on screen. Whenever I read such things, I'm always like, why? Why assume what people will react badly to? Let the bracelet be made of hair. Let the gloves be made of leather. Let the audiences see something new and bold, and then decide for themselves whether they like it or not. Let your show start a new trend. Let viewers decide for themselves what they find appealing or not. But the show's immense global popularity means that the showrunners, as well as everyone else involved on the sets of Bridgerton, definitely know a thing or two about making a product that is iconic and will forever be remembered in pop culture history. And period accurate or not, the costumes of Bridgerton are some of the most beautiful, interesting, and unique costumes ever presented on the small screen that do a great job of capturing our attention while towing the line between historical inspiration and contemporary creativity. As John Glaser said, for the costume design team, it is a delicate balance to not recreate the period exactly, but never abandon it completely. Always mixing a potpourri of historic research from 1820 to the modern day into what we hope to become the Bridgerton look. I'll see you next time.